The whole market called him a thief. 30 minutes later, they begged for forgiveness. Before you judge anyone, listen to the story until the very end. Because if you stop halfway, you might end up hating the wrong person. This happened on a hot Saturday afternoon. In the heart of Lagos, the market was alive. Traders shouted at customers. Danfo buses fought for passengers. Motorcycles squeezed through tiny spaces. Hawkers walked between cars, hoping to make one more sale before sunset. To everyone there, it was just another normal day. But in less than 30 minutes, one boy's life would change forever, and an entire market would be forced to confront a terrible mistake. Then, a scream pierced the air. "Thief! Thief! Catch him!" People stopped what they were doing. Market women abandoned their stalls. Passengers jumped out of buses. Even drivers left their vehicles to see what was happening. Within seconds, a huge crowd had formed. In the middle of it stood a skinny 17-year-old boy. His name was Emeka. His faded school uniform was soaked with sweat. His breathing was heavy. In one hand, he held a bunch of car keys. The other hand was stained with blood. Beside him, an elderly man lay unconscious next to a black SUV. Nobody asked what had happened. Nobody wanted an explanation. The crowd had already reached its own conclusion. "He's the thief." A loud slap landed across Emeka's face. He stumbled backwards. Before he could regain his balance, another man punched him in the stomach. Someone kicked his blue cooler. Hundreds of sachets of water burst open and rolled across the dirty road. His entire day's work, gone in seconds. The insults became louder. "You criminals have no shame. You came to steal from an old man? Beat him." Several people raised their phones. Some were laughing. Some were live streaming. Everyone wanted a video. No one wanted the truth. But something about Emeka confused a few people. He never fought back. He never tried to escape. He never even defended himself. Instead, he looked at the unconscious old man and kept repeating the same sentence. "Please, someone help him. Please." His voice shook, but nobody listened. The shouting drowned him out. Then, a young nurse forced her way through the crowd. "Move! Everybody move!" She knelt beside the elderly man, checked his pulse, looked at Emeka, then looked inside the black SUV. Suddenly, her expression changed. She turned toward the crowd and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Stop! He wasn't stealing." The market fell silent. You could almost hear people's hearts beating. But by then, the damage had already been done. Who was this boy? Why was he holding the man's keys? And why was there blood on his hands? To answer those questions, we have to go back 3 years. Back to the day Emeka's life began to fall apart. 3 years earlier, life was very different for Emeka. He was only 14 years old. Like every other boy his age, he dreamed of becoming someone important. Sometimes he imagined himself wearing a doctor's white coat. Other days, he dreamed of becoming an engineer. His father always smiled whenever Emeka talked about his future. "My son," he would say, "education is something nobody can ever steal from you." Those words stayed in Emeka's heart. His father wasn't a rich man. He worked as a commercial bus driver in Lagos. Every morning before sunrise, he left home hoping to earn enough money to feed his family. Some days were good. Others were difficult. But no matter how little he earned, he always made sure his family ate together. Life wasn't perfect, but they were happy. Then, everything changed. One evening, Emeka's father returned home earlier than usual. He looked weak. His face had lost its usual smile. He complained of severe chest pain and constant tiredness. First, everyone thought it was stress. But as the weeks passed, his condition became worse. Hospital visits became more frequent. Medical bills began to pile up. The little savings the family had disappeared. Soon, his father became too weak to work. Without his income, the family started falling apart. The landlord knocked on their door almost every week. "Madam," he said, "I've been patient long enough. You need to pay your rent. Emeka's mother apologized with tears in her eyes. Please, give us a little more time. The landlord sighed and walked away. But his patience was running out. Not long after that, the electricity was disconnected. The house became dark every night. Sometimes, there wasn't enough food to eat. On those nights, Emeka's mother would smile and say, "I'm not hungry," but Emeka knew she was lying. She simply wanted her children to eat. Then, the day they feared the most finally came. Emeka's father passed away. The small house became filled with cries. Neighbors gathered to comfort the family. His mother could barely stand. His little sister didn't understand why everyone was crying. She kept asking, "When is Daddy coming home?" Emeka had no answer. That day, childhood ended for him. He knew life would never be the same again. After the funeral, reality became even harder. His mother found work cleaning offices during the day. In the evenings, she washed clothes for neighbors. She worked until her hands became sore. Still, it wasn't enough. One afternoon, Emeka walked into the kitchen. There was only a small bowl of Gary left. Nothing else. He looked at his mother. She forced a smile. "We'll be okay." But Emeka knew they weren't. That evening, he made a decision. "Mama, I want to help." His mother looked at him. "Help? How?" "I'll sell sachet water after school." She shook her head immediately. "No. Your education comes first." "But Mama, you can't do everything alone." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, his mother held his hands. "My son, promise me something. Anything. No matter how difficult life becomes. Never steal. Never cheat. Never allow poverty to change the kind of person you are." Emeka nodded. "I promise." His mother smiled through her tears. "Your father always said, a good name is worth more than riches. Money comes and goes. But once people stop trusting you, it's almost impossible to earn that trust again." Those words became Emeka's guiding principle. The very next morning, before the sun rose, he filled a blue cooler with ice and sachet water. Then he began walking through the busy streets of Lagos. "Sachet water. Cold water." He called out to passengers stuck in traffic. Some people ignored him. Some bought from him. Some even insulted him. But every evening, he returned home with a few crumpled Naira notes. His mother never kept all the money. She always set aside part of it for his school fees. Months passed, then years. Emeka became known around the neighborhood as the polite boy with the blue cooler. He greeted everyone with respect. He never argued with customers. If someone accidentally paid too much, he returned the extra money immediately. Many people admired his honesty. Others simply saw another poor boy struggling to survive. No one knew that one ordinary Saturday would put everything his parents had taught him to the greatest test of his life. Because the same honesty that earned him respect was about to make an entire market believe he was a criminal. Now, let's return to that Saturday afternoon. The market was silent. Only moments earlier, the crowd had been shouting. Now, no one dared to speak. The young nurse knelt beside the elderly man. She quickly opened the emergency medical pouch she had found inside the SUV. Inside was a blood glucose meter, medication, and emergency supplies. She checked the man's condition. Then she looked at Emeka. "What happened?" she asked. Emeka wiped the tears from his face. His voice trembled. "I saw him fall. Everyone just stood there. I remembered hearing that some people keep emergency medicine in their cars. So I searched his pocket for the keys. I thought maybe I could find something that would help him." The nurse looked at him in disbelief. "You were trying to save him?" Emeka nodded quietly. Before she could respond, the elderly man's fingers moved. A few seconds later, he slowly opened his eyes. The crowd leaned closer. Someone whispered, "He's alive." The old man looked around in confusion. Then he spoke. "Where? Where is the young boy?" The nurse pointed toward Emeka. The elderly man struggled to sit up. His eyes filled with gratitude. "He saved my life. The market fell into complete silence. The words echoed through the crowd. He saved my life. The same people who had slapped him, insulted him, and called him a thief could no longer meet his eyes. One woman covered her face in shame. A traitor quietly put away the stick he had been holding. The young men who had been live-streaming slowly lowered their phones. Nobody knew what to say. The elderly man finally introduced himself. "My name is Chief Adewale." Several people gasped. Everyone knew the name. Chief Adewale owned one of the largest transport companies in the state. He employed hundreds of workers. Yet, the first thing he cared about wasn't his status. He looked at Emeka and asked softly, "My son, why didn't you run?" Emeka looked down, then answered, "If I had run, you might have died." Those few words broke every heart in the market. Chief Adewale reached out and held the young boy's bruised hands. Hands that had only wanted to help. Hands that moments earlier had been treated like those of a criminal. Tears rolled down the old man's face. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but I'm not the only one who owes you an apology." He turned to the crowd. "Look at this boy. He risked everything to save a stranger. And instead of helping him, you punished him." No one could argue. No one had an excuse. One by one, people stepped forward. Some apologized. Others picked up the scattered sachets of water from the ground. A market woman hugged Emeka tightly. "I'm sorry, my son. I judged you without knowing the truth." The man who had slapped him looked down in shame. "I was wrong. Please forgive me." Emeka didn't respond with anger. He simply nodded, because his parents had taught him something greater than revenge. They had taught him forgiveness. 1 week later, Chief Adewale invited Emeka and his mother to his office. Emeka had never seen such a beautiful building before. His mother held his hand tightly as they walked inside. Chief Adewale smiled warmly. "My son, you gave me a second chance at life. Now allow me to give you a chance at yours." He paid every outstanding school fee. Then he promised to sponsor Emeka's education, all the way through university. He helped Emeka's mother open a neighborhood grocery store. For the first time in years, she no longer worried about rent, or food, or school fees. Hope returned to their little home. Years passed. The hardworking boy with the blue cooler never forgot where he came from. He studied harder than ever before. Every challenge reminded him of the promise he had made to his parents. Eventually, the day finally arrived. Graduation day. Emeka stood proudly in his graduation gown. Not as the frightened boy everyone once called a thief, but as Dr. Emeka, a young man ready to save lives. As he walked across the stage, he searched the audience. There sat his mother, smiling through tears. Beside her, Chief Adewale, proudly clapping. When Emeka was invited to give the graduation speech, he walked slowly to the microphone. The hall became silent. He smiled. Then he said, "Years ago, an entire market called me a thief. They judged me before asking a single question. But that day taught me something I'll never forget." He paused, then continued, "The truth doesn't always arrive as quickly as judgment. That's why compassion matters. Because the person you're condemning today may be the one trying to save your life tomorrow." The audience rose to their feet. A standing ovation filled the hall. His mother wiped away tears. Chief Adewale smiled with pride. And somewhere deep inside, Emeka knew his father would have been proud too. The music becomes warm and uplifting. Narrator. In life, not everything is as it first appears. Sometimes, the loudest voices are the most mistaken. Before you join the crowd, before you point a finger, before you believe what everyone else believes, take a moment to seek the truth. Because one false accusation can destroy a life, but one act of kindness can change it forever. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe for more inspiring stories every week. Until next time, remember, kindness costs nothing, but it can be worth everything.